Three. Good morning in León, Mexico, and Sao Paulo, Brazil. Good afternoon in Tel Aviv. Thank you for joining me today as I interview Dr. Anat Gofen, Associate Professor in the Federman School of Public Policy at Hebrew University of Jerusalem, and Dr. Gabriela Lotta, Gabi Lotta, Professor and Researcher of Public Administration at Fundação Getúlio Vargas. Editors of one of the two special issues on COVID-19 available free to download and read on the website of the journal. The special issue we will talk about today will be street-level bureaucrats at the forefront of pandemic response, a comparative perspective. This special issue was recently published in the Journal of Comparative Policy Analysis, Research and Practice. JCPA is the premier journal for studies of comparative policy analysis and comparative policy studies. As such, we strive to engage with scholarship in the field of the highest caliber. So I have a few questions regarding your special issue and your perspective of the contribution of the special issue to our field. So feel free to answer in whichever order you prefer, and thank you for joining. So the first question is, how did the special issue come about? What kind of conversations were you and your co-authors having that led to this particular research on street-level bureaucrats and COVID-19 response? So you can answer in whichever order you prefer. And thank you again.
Go ahead, Gabriela.
Okay, so thank you for the invitation to be here with you today. It's an honor for us to publish this special issue. Just to say, in March or April last year, I don't remember, right? But Anat and me, we were talking about many papers we wanted to do together, and we had these long conversations about possibilities of improving our research on street-level bureaucracy. So both of us have been studying street-level bureaucracy in different ways. And then I think that in March or April last year, I asked Anat, maybe we should organize something about street-level bureaucracy, because it's so obvious that street-level bureaucrats have been in the main of the pandemic. They are the forefront of the pandemic. They have to face it, most of them like health workers, of course, and the pandemic was affecting the whole world. So it was a very nice opportunity for us to make a comparison about different places, different contexts, different street-level bureaucrats who have been affected by the pandemic. At the same time, we knew that this issue about street-level bureaucrats in crisis is underdeveloped in the literature. So we have been talking, let's do something together, let's think about a special issue. And then Anat came with this idea of organizing this special issue in the Journal of Comparative Policy Analysis. And then the rest is history. Do you remember something else, Anat?
No, I just want to, no, this is exactly what happened. Me and Gabriela I was really looking for opportunities to work with Gabriela. And we were talking about street-level bureaucrats as the forefront of the pandemic all over the world. I think it was exactly what Gabriela says. Maybe one thing to add is that, like street-level bureaucrats or street-level organizations in times of crisis is underexplored, despite a huge variety of studies about street-level bureaucracies. Comparative research in street-level scholarship is very rare. I have this chapter in a book that came out just 2019 with Peter Hupe about street-level bureaucracy, and there we review the literature, and we basically show that comparative research in street-level bureaucracies is very rare. Even studies that don't look on one profession or on one group aims to generalize something about street-level bureaucracy rather than to compare and identify nuances according to comparison. So this journal, this special issue in the journal really aimed to two aims. One, like Gabby just said, street-level bureaucracies as forefront of the pandemic, and the other one is that let's go to this comparative angle in street-level research, which, although, for decades, reach very, very little comparative research. So this is just to add to what Gabby just said.
Yeah, when we came up with the idea, I remember, Anat, that we just wrote to Lipsky and Brodkin, and both, because they have been studying this for their whole lives, and both of them said, oh my God, you have a very good idea, both about the crisis and about the comparative studies. So yeah, that's it.
So it was like, I don't know, in Hebrew say 2 birds in 1 grip.
Perfect. In Mexico, we say that you kill 2 birds with 1 stone, but that's very, it's really raw.
We talk about like you hold those, like you hold them.
Perfect. This was fantastic. So what is the main issue? What do we learn with your special issue? What do you think is the main message of the entire special issue? If there was one, like to say, one of the things that I personally got from reading it was the importance of comparing across extremely varied cases. So for example, the Bell-and-Led article compares Mexico and compares Canada and compares other jurisdictions. So I think that's one of the main things that I learned. The other one is the risk that street-level bureaucrats face in making decisions under conditions of crisis, right? Like, you know, we expect them to make day-to-day decisions, but these are like decisions that are life or death, and that, you know, could affect the way in which these are developed. But I don't know if I'm missing anything else that you think is sort of a core message that we can learn from your
I'll tell mine, and Gabi, just join and see whether you have another idea. Look, both in research and in practice, discretion or discretionary power of street forefront workers or street level workers is, you take it either as, okay, like inherent, there's nothing to do about it, or about how to better control it, or how to better monitor it or steer it. And I think people, again, both in scholarship and in the real world, and for me, the real world is really important, miss or overlook the role of or the potential role of street level bureaucrats in terms of a source of information and feedback upward. Okay, even street level scholarship, I say we have a sin, it means in a negative way. We look at things top down, although we call it bottom up. If you want, we look at things downward rather than upward. We always focus on street level bureaucrats as the dependent variable. I want to look at street level bureaucrats as the independent variable. And basically, it's not that what I'm saying that this is what papers in the special issue do, okay? Because most of them don't. But it just, their findings about the importance of street level bureaucrats, about their key role, like, I mean, like, addressing the crisis depends on street level bureaucrats, okay? This is like the infrastructure of the state. Street level bureaucrats are the infrastructure of the states, regardless which context you look at. And yet, we try to control them, we try to steer them, we try sometimes to understand them. We are very much focused on the discriminating, and we miss looking at the upward, how would I say, the upward trend or the upward stream, like how to look at street level bureaucrats as triggering change, or how to look at street level bureaucrats as a source of information for decision makers, how to look at street level bureaucrats as having knowledge that can be diffused upward. We always look downward. And for me, this was maybe to say, look, even us as street level scholars, look downward. We never look upward. Why? We
Mhm.
call ourselves bottom up, but we don't do really bottom up
Yeah,
research.
absolutely.
So for me, seeing this in crisis, where they have to respond fast, or otherwise people will die, or there will be really, they can't wait for instructions for the government. If they wait, the public dies, and still people don't see it, and still people are looking, okay, how to steer them, how to influence them, what. No, they are they're the emergency room of the crisis, and nobody understand it. Neither us as I don't know. I think we have hundreds of scholars around the world. We
Yeah.
also don't see them enough as the emergency room in the crisis.
Yeah, which totally connects with the actual theme, because you discussed healthcare. And I actually think, much as there's comparative healthcare scholarship, and this actually, Gabby, I don't know if you want to add something about the main message, but this comparative perspective on healthcare response and healthcare street level bureaucrats was never in anywhere. I couldn't find it anywhere. So I think this is one.
Even in another paper that Gabriela and me and Marcelo just published in a different journal, okay, not in this special issue, about healthcare, community health worker in Brazil. They had to fight the government in order to get a room to become a pandemic instrument. This is really unbelievable. Okay, so they even have to fight to become a resource for government, which is, it's almost an absurd.
Absolutely. Gabby.
Yeah.
I totally agree with Anat that this idea of upward influence was very important in the special issue. Also, I think that the special issue was very nice because looking at the street level bureaucrats during the crisis is a way to see that all the issues exacerbated. And this enabled us to make comparisons, just because, just as you said, everybody is just facing the same kind of problems during the pandemic. And they are all exacerbated because of the crisis. So we could see the discretion, we could see the coping, we could see all these kind of concepts that we usually apply when observing street level bureaucrats in a very evidenced, exacerbated way that was very good to make comparison. This is part of my observation. But there's another issue I would like to bring also. For me, it was very important to see that during the crisis, something happened that the literature does not explain much. It's the idea that usually the literature says that street level bureaucrats want to have more discretion. They want to have more freedom. They want to be free. They want to make their own decisions. But what we saw is that during the crisis, this is not true, because maybe there's like a curve in which when they have too much freedom, they are too much alone in the field during the crisis, in which they have their own lives on risk. They don't want to be free. Like, they want to be protected. They want to have recommendations. They want to be guided. This was very evident in some of the papers that were looking in very extreme cases, especially in health workers, because they are in extreme cases of their own lives. And in these cases, the idea of the guidance and the profession and the orientation was very important to explain how they how they react to the crisis. So also, I think that this was an innovation for the literature.
Absolutely. And one of the, actually, this takes me, you've answered another question that I had, which is how the special issue engages with questions of comparative public policy and comparative policy analysis. But one of the things that I was thinking about is how many cases, right? Like, in your special issue, you have cases like in the United States with the Perez-Chiquez, Strack, and Sullivan's article, but you also have some on Mexico, and then some on Brazil. And I'm always, and then in Italy and Switzerland. And I'm always sort of struck also, Canada and the United States. I'm always struck. Do you think how many more years do we need to do like in-depth case studies, and when can street level bureaucracy research, particularly comparative, move towards larger N or medium N? And I asked this question because I had this conversation with Anat a few months ago on how many cases, right? So I mean, taken as a whole, your entire special issue covers, if I didn't count badly, like between 8 and 9 countries. So that's a very decent number of cases. So I don't know, where do you think this is gonna go? Do you think we're gonna continue for a few more years to do more case studies, or maybe should we focus on subnational comparative case studies, and then subnational to subnational in other countries? So what kind of combinations of comparative analysis do you think we need to continue doing? And you can answer in whichever order.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think there is such a huge gap in terms of comparing professions, in terms of comparing geography units, in terms of comparing policy sectors, in terms of comparing, we easily moved from street level workers or organizations, bureaucracies, saying, are these governmental agencies or for-profit or non-governmental agencies, which we can compare. So you can go wherever you want. There are still gaps, I have to say. When we review the literature to that chapter that I just mentioned, you see professions are rarely compared. States are rarely compared. Organizational settings are rarely compared. So basically, we can compare whatever you want. I mean, like, there's not enough literature in any direction, as far as I know.
So this is like the world is open, and I know that you have a forthcoming that you did workshops on with Fernando Nieto Morales and with Rick Peters from El Colegio de Mexico and CEDAR respectively on street level bureaucrats and so on in weak institutional context. So I mean, this is clear that it's a great gap. So yes, just the subnational units and the professions give you a lot. So I don't know, Gabby, what else would you say things to be discussed or analyzed?
Yeah, I agree with Anat, but in this special issue, we were able to collect a good number of cases, but we still don't have cases from Africa, and we still don't have cases from China and Japan and some Asian countries. And I think that we still miss to reach this audience and also this literature. We received some proposals in the first round of the special issue, but then they were not approved at the end. And I think that also Anat is inside this effort, and me and Rick and other scholars, to improve, to bring more scholars from the Global South to also discuss with us. Because I think, Raul, that we still miss comparison between the North Global and the South. Because I think that all the theory about street level bureaucracy was developed. I'm sure all the theory was developed in the USA and also Europe, Western Europe. And of course, we have to check if all the findings and the hypotheses are also suitable for countries with weak institutions, with not so strong democracies, or maybe without democracies, in which the welfare state was never developed, and things like that. So I think also that they are Anat's effort to look at Israel, my effort to look at Brazil, Riggs and Fernando and Elizabeth and other scholars from Mexico. I think that this effort is very important to improve our theories, and then we have to make comparisons also with the usually studied countries.
Thank you. Which also leads to my next two questions, which are the ones that I'm going to start closing the interview with, which is, where do you see this particular research? So is there an afterward after these special issues? You assembled a number of scholars and then you produce this fantastic special issue. Are you going to continue working on this, or what are the directions you're taking this? And then what do you think is the next gap in the literature for, and actually you've partially answered this on this scholarship for comparative policy studies and comparative policy analysis as they converge with street level bureaucracy scholarship. Just before we got online on the interview, we were discussing this sort of weird disconnect between public policy and public administration. And it's funny because I also feel that this is also disconnected in comparative policy analysis and comparative policy, comparative public administration. So where do you think this is going to go? So these are two questions. Whether with this particular group of scholars, or maybe you will try to get scholars from Asia and Africa for a future special issue. And, you know, whether do you think there's something pressing that you are working on that you, and I think Gabi pointed to fragmented democracies and non-democracies. So these are sort of those two combined but similar questions. So go ahead.
Gabi, go ahead. I need to think.
Yeah, me too. We haven't been talking much about it. I think we want to keep working on this, and we have this group meeting in different conferences, and so, but we haven't been talking about it really. I am organizing also another special issue for another journal only about developing countries or not developed countries. And Anat has a paper on it, and Rick has a paper. And so some of the scholars also are publishing in this other special issue about street level bureaucracies in non-developed countries. Mm-hmm. So I think that this community is growing. We are doing things together. We are writing together, but we don't have really a plan, I think, about how to. I don't know, Anat, what do you think about it? We don't have a plan about the future, but we are working on it. So.
Yeah, I mean, like you see a few developments, okay? Because you see, one of them is I think that Gabi and Rick initiative about shifting attention to street level bureaucracy in the developing world is really important, and this special issue and in some conferences, I think it's really important, and I think more emphasis should continue be there. I admit I'm trying to shift focus also to street level management and not only to street level bureaucrats. For 4 decades, we were talking so much about the street level bureaucrats, which are really important, but we were overlooking street level managers, who I think really a very unique and distinct category of management that needs much more attention. So I admit I have a plan to also to push in that direction. Also, please bear in mind that because we wanted to put the special issue really quickly, so we were gathering, like most of the studies gathered information or data from the beginning of the pandemic, or in some of the papers, we were looking even on the directives, okay, rather than on the ground street level implementation. Okay, we looked in one of the papers, we compared how the instructions in Israel, for example, referred to different professions to cops, teachers, and health workers. So I think the next step will be for sure looking from a more a longer period of time, and to talk with street level bureaucrats, in a perspective of a year, what happened during the pandemic. I'm sure we're going to get very rich and different insights about what happened there. It's still, there is no plan, but I easily can see, in a few months, another special issue that talks about street level bureaucrats in the pandemic, but not when it's sparked, but rather from a retro perspective, a longer retro perspective.
Yeah.
it would be very easy to organize a special issue like this. I don't know if JCPA will allow it, but I'm sure it's a possibility. So and again, this upward perspective, which I'm trying to shout wherever I have the opportunity to talk, and comparing professions and settings. There's so much work to do about street level bureaucracy. I think there is opportunity for so many people to get into the field and contribute.
I'm one of those who is getting into SLBs. I mean, I've done implementation work, but now I'm literally like, it's almost like an obsession. So I've read a lot of the work that you both have been doing. So this is true. My last question, and I think this is actually a new question that I'm gonna be asking those who are doing special issues for the journal. What do you think is sort of the key suggestion you would give potential organizers of special issues? What do you think it's the most important, or what made it? As I said, and not because several of my friends are in the special issue, but I really enjoyed this special issue. So what do you think makes a special issue successful, right? Like, how do you think a potential proposer, and this is important because we just closed the submissions for special issue proposals in late April of 2021. So I think this sort of insight would help potential proposers of special issues.
I think that the first point is that it's very important to have a very specific issue. I mean, you have to ask exactly what is important, what you want in the special issue. In this way, I don't know if you agree or not, but we didn't receive any proposal out of what we wanted. Like, everybody, papers were good or not good, but they were very specific in what we wanted. We had a very clear research question that should be responded by each paper, and I think that this was very good. The second point, I think it was very good to have a network. We have in the street level bureaucracy agenda, we have a network of people that is studying, and we meet every year in conferences and things like that. And it was very important to have this network, because they submitted papers or they asked people to submit papers. So they also knew what kind of concepts, what kind of theories. So the papers were very, they were combining to each other. It was easy to do a kind of comparison when we wrote the introduction, because everybody was speaking the same kind of the discourse. They had the same kind of concepts. They were very integrated. And I think that this helps because we have a very good network in the people that study street level bureaucracy. I don't know what else, Anat.
I want to add something, if Gabby, tell me what you think. Although we weren't planning this in advance, but we really wanted to put as many good papers, okay, because we rejected many, but we wanted to have as many good papers as possible. And then at one point, we understand that basically all the papers are about COVID, and all the papers are about street level. So like putting this long introduction, or even in the literature review of street level bureaucracy literature, which is huge, or about the COVID, is to put them in each and every paper. It's just a waste, because there will be so many things that will be redundant. If you look at the special issue as a special issue, this is maybe what I want to say. Here it is. Many times people don't see the special issue as really a coherent thing. Many times it's just, if you look even at the introductions, many times you see what I call my student, which I don't like, a grocery list. Okay, this paper talks about this paper talks about that, this paper talks about this, paper talks about that, and this is like the list. Gabriela and I really wanted to bring a comprehensive, integrative perspective on the papers we had. So if you look at the introduction, I think it's not like many other introductions. It has this theme, okay, or this frame that it offers, and not just a list. And what two things allowed us this. One, we told the contributors 5,000 to 6,000 max word limit, but you don't need to write about classical street level bureaucrats literature, and you don't need to describe the context, because this is like more than 1,000 or 1,500 words anyhow, and it will be the same 1,500 words for each paper. So we'll do it in the introduction. You are free of it, okay? So, and then our next one was really a challenge in a way. We got these trees, we wanted to bring the forest. And it took us, I don't know, it wasn't just, like I'm a special guest editor in other places. So I know it's like, it took us some time to make these trees into a forest, but we insisted. I don't know if you remember, Gabby, there were nights we were like, we're not making this a list. We are giving this as a whole, as a gestalt thing, this introduction. And I think for me, this was a huge experience in this term, making the special issue a real collection. It's not like, okay, nice, here, good paper, another good paper, but what's the overview? And I think that for comparative journal, this is even, the medium is the message, if you follow me, okay? Because if we are for a comparative journal, so let's present the comparative perspective on the items in the special issue. So
Perfect.
I completely agree with Gabriela, but I think that
Totally agree.
we allowed to take out all the pieces that we thought will be redundant and get like a forest rather than a list of trees in the introduction. This is my message to special issue guest editors.
Yeah, totally agree with you.
Thank you so much. So with these are all my questions, and thank you so much for taking the time for this. This interview will be posted on the JCPA website and circulated through our social networks. You can find us on Twitter at JCPA_ICPA and on Facebook as the Journal of Comparative Policy Analysis. Thank you, Gabi, and thank you, Anat, for joining me for this interview. It was incredibly insightful. And I look forward to continuing these conversations on comparative studies of street-level bureaucrats.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
So I'm going to stop recording right now.